From the Studio 13 Studios in Splendora, Texas, Hank's Think Tank is brought to you by Splendora Cafe and Barbecue.
Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to Hank's Think Tank. 2 in 1 day. It's Saturday. No, it's not. It's Friday. Man, it seems like Saturday because we're going to have a long weekend. Well, it's Friday, and I've been on this water kick here lately and talking to a lot of individuals about the water issues that we have here in Montgomery County. Brings me to James Ridgway. He's in today. He's running for position 3 of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District Board. And that election is going to be coming up in November. So you need to look out for these guys and try to get to know who they are and make a decision. And we're going to have a conversation today about water, about the SJRA, about the board itself, and about what's going on here in Montgomery County. James, welcome aboard, bro. How are you?
I'm going to be better after this whiskey.
There you go.
I was telling you before we started, common saying in the water wars arena, whiskey is for drinking. Water is for fighting over.
There you go. There we go. At least it's become that way here in Montgomery County. Well, we've been sitting here talking for a while, just getting to know each other. And, this is a complicated issue. And it's an issue that does affect everybody. And whether we all like it or not, we're kind of stuck with it. And we got to work through it. And we got to figure out a way to get past it. I don't know how to do that as of yet because I'm still kind of learning what's going on. But I did want to get both sides to this issue. And so James has kind of opposing views from the people that I've been talking with so far, and some of it makes sense. So I wanted to make sure and get this out to you guys as well. So James, I know that you had watched the podcast with Simon Cicada of Quadvest, and you agreed with some of his statements and disagreed with others. But let's just find out kind of where you are as far as what you would like to see if you get elected to this board. What would you like to see if you get elected to this board?
To me, what's most important, and you know what, I probably should just say I'm here to light up your comment board after we're done.
Okay, great.
I'm not going to have the most popular things to say out of the others that you've spoken with, but I'm not going to go around and try to say how much cheaper I'm going to make your water and how kumbaya and great. What I want is for all of us to look at the problem together as Montgomery County, not this city versus that. If we go that route, you want to go Wild West, then we can all look out for ourselves and end up hitting all of our pocketbooks as a consequence because we didn't work together to do long-term infrastructure planning on this subject. And I mentioned before, we started, if you just, born and raised in the area, right? Saw the Woodlands Mall pop up when I was like 5th grade. I'm 38 now. So I've seen, like a lot of people in this area, like my own eyes have seen the growth. If you look at the census data, 30 years ago, you're seeing 180,000 people. That number has more than tripled.
Oh, yeah.
And so you tell me, everybody, how do you approach a subject like this? How do you keep a resource the same amount of money that it's always been? I don't know. It's always felt like it's just there. It's just free. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Triple the population. And guess what? It's not slowing down. Those population trends show us hitting over 1 million. I want to say maybe 2030, maybe shortly. That's not that far away. Right. So what do I want? I want us to stop suing each other. Okay. I want us to go, how can we, even though Simon and I disagree, and there's plenty of online message boards to prove that. Mm-hmm. I've never looked at him as someone that is just out of his mind. I believe he believes that X, Y, and Z are important.
Okay.
And I can kind of see where he's coming from. That's one kind of stakeholder out here. Now, if I happen to be a private water utility making my livelihood off of building the infrastructure, pumping the water, delivering it to customers, if that's how I fed my family, I'd love everything that Simon says. But that's what I mean. That's one very limited demographic. Most of us, that's not why we care about water. We get our water from either someone like Simon, or a lot of people get it from a public utility, or and I feel like people forget this all the time, all the rural individual well owners that exist here in Montgomery County. We got to think about all of them.
There's a lot of well owners.
So bring them all to the table, let them get mad, give them some whiskey, and let's hammer this out. But, the moment we start suing and then we start seeing the actual cost of water go up because we're giving money to lawyers. And let's think about the dark irony of that for a second. Let's say you're a citizen in the city of Conroe and your city sues SJRA. Okay, so your tax money...
Which is happening, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So your tax money, you're paying those lawyers to sue them. And I may have that the other way around. It may be the SJRA suing because either way, you got an offense and you got a defense. Well, you pay money to SJRA as a fee user, as a what they call a participant in the GRP, the Groundwater Reduction Plan.
Mm-hmm.
So you're paying their lawyers to either defend or go on the attack. So when I say the dark irony, you're paying for a fight where you have representation on both sides. I guess some would argue that it's worth it because if this side wins or that side wins, then it'll... But that's been going on for 5 years. No, 6. And I just always have this image of the attorneys that are involved on every side of this just winking at each other at how much money they're making off of this.
Hey, that's the nature of that business for sure.
Yeah.
Most litigation takes 6 to 10 years to work out, sometimes longer. It depends on the complexity of the topic or the issue. And lawyers are always going to come out ahead. That's
when do you think would be long? Like 6 years? What's the Hank threshold for like this particular issue? When is it too long?
Well, I think it's too long when all possibilities have been exhausted and we're still litigating. That's when it's too long. Mm-hmm. Or when certain things have been proven or disproven and we're still litigating.
Yeah.
Then that's too long. And now I know for a fact that attorneys will try to drag things out as long as possible. They get paid by the hour. They want to make as much money as possible. Again, they're a lot like Simon. They have a certain product or service they sell, and that's what they want to do. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that our legal system has gone that way, but it has. But I don't really have a problem with the litigation behind all this. I have a problem with the fact that it appears to me, from just an average taxpayer guy, that there's a lot of conflicting reports. For instance, the groundwater reduction plan, from what I've been told, was based on the fact that, hey, our groundwater levels are dropping. We're pumping out more water than is coming back into the system, and we're losing over the long run. So what's happening is the ground's compacting, we're starting to sink, it's causing a whole bunch of other problems. But I haven't seen any really good peer-reviewed data that proves that. So if we have all these GRP contracts out there that are based on that, but it's not accurate, I got a problem with that. Especially if I'm paying my average water bill, about 40% of that goes to the SJRA under those GRP contracts.
Well, why'd you let that happen, Hank?
I was unaware of it at the time.
So whose fault?
Just like most average voters didn't know it was going down.
Let's talk about that. This is an issue that I hate to use the word passionate about, but I was a journalist, right? And I spent time, I got paid to go, so it made me, I'd say, more aware than the average person. So I like to use this as an example. It's one of my favorite books. It's a good movie too, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay, yeah, great.
I love it, right?
Absolutely.
The way that starts, and Douglas Adams is just brilliant, the author, but It starts with Arthur Dent waking up with bulldozers outside, and they're about to bulldoze his house, right?
Right.
And he is obviously not happy about this, and the construction crew's like, well, if you had such a problem, why didn't these plans have been at City Hall for the last year? Why didn't you say anything? And they proceed to bulldoze his house. Meanwhile, the aliens show up, surround the Earth with their destruction ships, and announce to the populations of the world, hey, we're going to go ahead and destroy the Earth to make way for the hyperlane. Everybody freaks out. And they're like, why are you so upset? The plans have been in Alpha Centauri for the last 50 years. And, okay, so I like that story because how easy is it for all of us to be mad and have that righteous indignation? And there's two parts of what I'm about to say, because I get it. I've worked 2 jobs for a good part of my career. I was making newspaper pay there with a baby. I was teaching at the college just to make a little extra. Right. I've got 2 kids now. So we're busy. It is very, very difficult to have your pulse, have your finger on the pulse of everything, right?
It's impossible these days.
Another, ironic issue here is we often know a lot more on the federal, what's going on there. Some people, even the state side. And this is something that I think it's one of the most Texan things about me. I believe in the power of local government. I preach it, all right? I believe.
Well, that's the only thing that we can manage.
And that's exactly my point. Yeah. And so I've been a mud board member for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And because I get that people don't want to go to, I made it a big point to get our stuff online so that maybe if you couldn't make it, but you wanted to go back and listen, that's another topic. But I guess what I'm getting at is there is ownership here for all of us. If you don't like what's happening and you would have done things differently had you known, well, let's put that in the book and go, okay, next time. And I hope that's what we're doing right now. I hope that we, it's not the way I prefer to go for us to see sticker shock. Now I'm involved, right? But let's at least acknowledge it. Let's go, I wasn't paying attention then.
Right, but we never had the option. And this isn't something that came to vote. I mean, that's for sure.
Not exactly. I mean,
there weren't town halls.
There were.
I never covered heard of them. Any. I never heard of any.
It went on for years, but it's so long ago. So you got to rewind the clock, and it makes sense.
So how many years ago? Because I came out here in 1994.
I mean, they've been talking about this. I'd say I can give a credible answer back to 2010. And this is when I started as a journalist. So I knew stuff was going on, but I can also tell you that drought, was it 2011, 12? It got a lot of people nervous. You go talk to well owners in this area, and there were people or were entities that felt like they were about to start sucking sand out of their wells. Mm-hmm. It was bad. And so that's what everybody was focused, like, oh, that could have, and the question is, if we had that again, and we didn't have the surface water that we have now, there's a question of whether or not we could actually supply enough water. But I don't know. That's neither here nor there. But it's one of those things that people wonder about.
Right. But going back to that original point, the GRP, or not the SJRA fee that I pay on my water bill every month, I had absolutely zero to do with.
Let's go look up the minutes.
And I could not have avoided it had I tried.
I don't believe that, Hank. And I'm. It's okay that we disagree about it, but I believe 2020 hindsight being what it is, that you could have gone in to your city council meeting when they were signing the agreement to enter into that GRP, and you could have said, "Don't you do it, motherfuckers."
Okay, but here's the deal: if they didn't sign that GRP, they would have been fined $10,000 a day for everything in excess that they pumped. That wasn't part of that. So what is that?
Well, what we're learning,
though, is...
Do you think
the city of Splendora can afford $10,000 a day?
What you're really saying is actually a step back from the question. It's not about than them signing it. Although it's about the reason. So let's talk, the reason they had to sign it was because of some people describe it as a gun to their head. And it's like, you've got to do this or here's the consequences.
10,000 a day. Yeah. I mean, I don't know of a municipality in this area, and I'm close to a lot of them, that could handle 10,000 a day today. Mm-hmm. Just not a possibility.
No, I get that. But now, as citizens, we have to go back.
But as citizens, we wouldn't have had the ability to put a stop to that if that threat loomed over the city leaders. They'd be like, hey, we have to do this. We've got to sign this. Sorry, but you're just going to have to pay the SJRA fee.
Rewind the tape even further. How did it get to that point? Why was it that the cities were having to do that? The MUDs were having to do that? Well, because the groundwater district did what?
You tell me.
I mean, they signed the policy that said, okay, we're going to require a 30% reduction. And the
reason why they were going to require a 30% reduction was because they convinced these cities that our groundwater is being depleted. But then it was found out later on, and even brought forth in the 53rd court, that wasn't true. Or illegal, actually.
So, again, not going to be a popular thing to say. But
right, so it all turned out to be bullshit, basically.
Yeah, depending on who you hired. If I go get a hydrologist, and he says, this is why I have a real issue with trust and consultants and mm-hmm. back to the lawyer thing.
But that's why you do a peer-reviewed study, though.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, go hire a bunch of them and y'all come back and let's put your answers together. Like, I'd be interested in an approach like that. But there's a term I've heard before, hydrostitutes, where, mm-hmm. This one over here in their studies, you could never deplete. You could do everything. Every one of us could build a well and there would be no consequences. We could do that. No problem. Yeah. And there's people out there saying that, like certified
I bet there are.
hydrologist. Now you have some over here and that are going, I don't know. I mean, maybe if you did this number, mm-hmm. like it might be good in 20, 40, 60, 80 years. This is what the models show. We're not sure. Mm-hmm. It's the fucking ground. It's a lot of area. So now, and I got a degree in philosophy because apparently I hate making money. But what you really have is a philosophical conversation. You have, I'm going to just go this route and hope for the best. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be very conservative. And I would argue, and this is where Simon gets me wrong, I'm not an original OG LSGCD mm-hmm. Apologist. I think part of the reason we're here is they got a little too conservative. And I say that because as this stuff heated up, that 64,000 acre feet that they were using mm-hmm. for the Montgomery County area, they were like, well, what about 80? What about like 90? So they upped it. They were willing to up it, but maybe if they would have chosen something, like, we don't know. That's the truth.
But see, here's the thing. There's a difference between a poll and a study. You can get 2 or 3 hydrostitutes to come in and they'll give you opposing views. You need to do a study. And a scientific study is done by gathering X number of individuals with X number of degrees or whatever. You get all those to create a private independent report. You take all those reports together and you come up with a broad consensus. Mm-hmm. Take that broad consensus and continue to break it down until you come up with what you actually have as science.
Yeah.
Did we do that? If we didn't, then that's the crux of the problem.
I'm going to say this.
And all the money that I've paid mm-hmm. to the SJRA, I should get back every damn last penny of it.
Okay.
If somebody made that mistake.
I'll
if it
grant
was
you
that bad, then yeah, I should get that money back.
Here's what I'll say, and I'm anticipating others arguing with me as I say it. Yes, those studies were done, are being done, have been done. You name your verb tense. Okay. It's been going on.
So what is the science then? What's the science? Are we depleting? We actually depleting our aquifers or we're not?
This is what amazes me. I see all these charts. I'm not a hydrologist. I worked at the water district for 3 years as education and public awareness coordinator, but I never got, I was going around talking to kids in schools and how aquifers work and the Conroe New Lions, Rotary Club, this is the fundamentals. Learning just enough to be able to hang in these kind of conversations, but then comes along, a new guard that has a new hydrologist that's saying, oh, all those numbers of those wells where the level is going down, no, it's not a problem. And it's like, what do you mean? The numbers are going down. And you're like, oh no, it's good. And I don't ever hear why that's okay. Oh, because there's 180 million acre feet down there. Almost what I hear them not saying is there's still water. You're just going to have to pay to change your infrastructure to get it.
So the latest that I've heard is we have 180 million acre feet of aquifer. Okay. Which is astronomical when you think about it.
So much.
And at the current rate of pumpage, it would take, I think they said 70 years to drop that level by just a few inches.
Well, I can show you a chart that shows in the Conroe area on the Jasper well over, I think it was 100, 200 feet over the last 50 years. That's not inches.
In a well, not in an aquifer. And there's a difference.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's a difference. Because when you create a well, you create a void in the ground.
Absolutely.
That void fills up. It's not the aquifer. It's just that void.
But let me ask you, which one do we care about? Because here's the water level in the aquifer, not the hydrostatic pressure in the well, not the wellhead, because that pressure is pushing that water up.
Right.
It's actually down here and it's pushing the water halfway. Okay. Which one do we care about? I would say probably both for different reasons, but why would I care about this one, the bottom one? Because that's not where I'm getting my water. What does it mean to me that the numbers here versus here versus here? What does it mean? How does it impact my life?
I think it means a lot. If it would mean the difference between whether we really are depleting an aquifer or not. And that's where this whole thing comes into play. That's where the GRPs come into play. That's where the SJRA fees come into play. To me, as a taxpayer, it means everything.
But you can't
either
actually
we are
get your water.
We either are depleting those aquifers or we're not.
Well, there
has to be one or the other. It can't be, well, on Thursdays we do, but on Tuesdays we don't.
And this is the part that frustrates me because we have all this data that shows the number. We have been using more groundwater than it recharges for decades. Until the surface water treatment plant came on, and then we're not. I don't say we. I just mean I'm not in some cabal group, water Illuminati that has a stake in this. I'm saying
water Illuminati,
right?
Yeah, that's good.
The Montgomery County, we can see. We have all these different monitoring stations. We can see at least that static level going down, and so then what I think I might hear them say is, well, you have a cone. What's it called? A cone of influence. Mm-hmm. So if both of us were awkwardly drinking out of the same Sunday shake, and your straw was bigger, and I had one of those tiny coffee straws. Okay, well, there's going to be some differences there, and you're going to be able to get more than me, and I'm also going to be fighting against your cone of influence. The bigger that pump is in the ground, if I'm a small individual well owner and I'm fighting that force. And so now you talk about that level, and that level, it sounds like we have a question here. Is it staying the same? Is it going down? Is it going up? But whatever the answer to that is if it goes down, which from all the data I've seen is it's not going up. We're using more water than the system can recharge. We're building things I can't
agree with that. I hate to interrupt you,
but
I just have to. I can't agree with that because I know for a fact, just because I've observed nature enough to know that things change. So I think the level of the aquifers will drop come back up, maybe even go up, we'll drop again. And this may happen over a period of many, many years.
That's how those clay layers were formed.
Exactly. So
They didn't magically
but
get there,
I
right?
would think we would be able to, without a doubt, pinpoint how much water we're pumping out and how big of a difference we're making. And so far, no one's been able to convince me of that yet.
Well,
I want the data.
I'll
I
try to do the same experiments I did with the fifth graders, with you or anybody else, because I don't think most of us know much about how water gets into the ground, I don't remember any class on this ever.
A lot of people don't. I agree with you on that.
So
too.
Let's take Hurricane Harvey.
Okay.
I think the annual rainfall for that year was 60 to 70 inches, depending on where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Hurricane Harvey was a third of that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I got these numbers right. And that was within a week, really like 3 days.
Yeah, there was a lot of rain.
All right, everybody. So pop quiz, how much Hurricane Harvey water is making its way down into our aquifers? What do you think?
A lot.
I don't think so. Because I saw so much flooding that it tells me that water, well, the ground got saturated quick. And this is stuff you can go look up, and you can do this with your kids, and you can pour water into a mix of sand, and you can you put a dye in it so you can watch it, and you can see how fast it actually moves. So depending on the kinds of soils, we're talking inches, like your actual surface here before it gets to a lot of the sands. It doesn't move hundreds of feet in a day.
No, it's slow.
So
slow.
The moment, like a sponge, that ground gets saturated, everything else is runoff, flooding. And so I would say, I mean, I'll put an inch. I'll say, I don't know, but I know that the fact that there was so much flooding means that water couldn't get into the ground.
Right.
And so, okay, they can measure that kind of stuff. They can measure, we know the rainfall, the precipitation, and we're very fortunate. We have a national forest all around Montgomery County area, and it's like a giant rainwater harvester. There's not a bunch of concrete runoff issues. So that kudos.
It stays. Yeah.
And so okay, we can measure how much is coming in, and we also have a sense of how much is coming out, unless there's a few, rogue meterless wells out there. I'm sure there are. With the prices going up, you might dig your own well and not tell anybody, but so the numbers are there, and I can point you. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to quote all the different numbers. I know that the increased demand, the increased number of people, is putting more pressure, or taking that pressure away from those aquifers than all of human history ever. Now, barring some weird natural disaster I wasn't around for, but that seems to me pretty clear that you have more people, you're using more water. How can it even be possible that the aquifer is like, oh no, I got more, I'm fine, when it's got a limited recharge based on the rainfall it gets and based on the infiltration of that rainwater into the soil?
Okay. That could be a valid point. And if that is a valid point, great. But are we there yet?
That is a valid point.
and I'm not sure we're there yet. I mean, yeah,
I could agree with you on that.
We're pumping a lot of water out right now, and I think that given the size and the scope and the fact that we're dealing with more than one aquifer as well, I think there are 4.
Mm-hmm.
Given the size, scope, and the fact that we're dealing with 4 separate aquifers that we can get water out of, how much farther can we go before we actually start to see depletion or an issue?
I've talked to people in this county, that, especially the individual well owners that have had, they put their wells in 30, 40 years ago. They've had to lower them. That's real. And especially those places that were in between the development, if like the 1488 area.
That could also be just basic geology.
It could be. So let's go back to the philosophical conversation. Like, the hydrologists that are the experts here, they would be who we go. But I guess what I'm getting at, people, is that their knowledge is limited to the data that we have been able to do, and it is hard to do large. I mean, it's expensive. It's the ground, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm.
So with what we do have and with the experts that are out there, I feel like it all comes down to everything's fine, and go ahead and live your lives as if there is no consequence,
Mm-hmm.
or do something else and go, I'm not sure. And I think when I said a moment ago, like, I can agree when you said, though, do we need to do it now? I wasn't in a leadership position. I think it was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago. I just had my 20-year reunion, so.
Awesome.
But,
I'm not going to say
I feel like a lot
long
of
our reunion would be.
I feel like a lot of us can say, oh, well, if I was there, I would have made this decision. But we know a little bit more than we did then. And so you kind of have to make a philosophical, like, am I more liberal with how I think? And I don't mean that in a political sense. I mean, am I more liberal with, like, I think this data means there's this infinite supply that I can't really put a dent in.
Mm-hmm.
There is a side out there that is like saying this often. And I go, I don't know how you could possibly know empirically, beyond any kind of doubt, know that based on the limited data that does exist. And then you have some mousy people over here. They're like, I don't, we're going to destroy the, so I think when I said at the beginning, what I'd like is, like, come back to the table, stop suing each other. Let's try to find something down the middle that, yeah, maybe you're going to have to pay something. And I this is why I said I'm not optimistic about my campaign, because I'm not going around saying
it's a
water's
tough
free. I'm saying that the long-term consequences of being wrong are unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I think it means to be conservative.
But that also goes both ways.
Yes, it does. Don't be irresponsible. Don't. And so to take the surface water treatment plant, that's a phased project.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to be turning on phase 2 right now? Do we need,
But
I don't think so.
Here's the thing, okay? Let's say you own a hot dog stand, okay? And this may be a terrible analogy, but I'm going to try to provide it anyway.
It's all right.
Let's say you own a hot dog stand, and hot dogs are very popular. As a matter of fact, every person in your county eats hot dogs every day, okay? And let's say you get your hot dogs from one supplier where there may be an endless supply, there may not. No one knows. But on the other side, there is a large supply of hot dogs that you can physically see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Thing about it is that supply of hot dogs that you can physically see is kind of a long way off.
Mm-hmm.
So now, as this hot dog vendor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get those hot dogs that I can physically see, and I'm not going to ask you if you want to buy those, but I'm going to force you to buy those. Those are the hot dogs you're going to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be $1.87 more than the hot dogs you've been buying. Even though I may be able to reach down the hole and pull up hot dogs for the next 160 years,
Yeah.
And that's how I see the SJRA. How I see them right now is they're attempting to force me to buy surface water when I already have water here, based on science that may or may not be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not coming to my municipality and saying, hey, we've got this new water treatment facility and it's great, and here's the quality of the water. It's so much better than the water you get out of ground. It's colder, it's cleaner, it tastes better, it's better for you. We fortified it with fluoride, so it's better for your teeth.
You'd be a good salesperson, Hank.
They're not selling us this. They're actually trying to force us to buy it. They're through GRPs, through fees, through litigation, everything else. They're trying to say, look, guys, we're running out. And if we're not running out, then we're subsiding. Anyway, there's some sort of problem that we either have or can create. And we're going to force you to buy this water. I am 100 million% against that. I'm against it as a taxpayer.
I would be against
I'm
that too.
against it as an American. I'm against it as a Montgomery Countyan. I mean, I think it's bullshit. And if it's actually happening, that's a big, big problem.
We need to get you some whiskey too, just to
maybe so. But
I'm not trying to make light of it.
I'm really not trying to be angry about this, and I'm really not, because I do see value in that SJRA fee, but I see it from a totally different direction than most people do. What I see is, hey, let's stop giving the SJRA that money, and let's take that money and use it to build our own infrastructure here. And if we decide that we want to buy surface water, then we'll use that money to create our own pipeline and our own lift stations and go back toward Conrail, and we'll grab some of that and we'll purchase it at a decent rate from the SJRA. We don't have to let them build the infrastructure and raise our prices. We've already paid for it.
A couple things. I am 100 million% with you if it went down like that. And there's two parts of me that like can lean either way. Because I'm going to say they never came in and forced anybody. They came and said like, hey, we could build this thing. And that's why I said there's two parts of me, right?
Yeah.
That, you know, they're going to come in. They didn't come, you know, kick down the door.
I think through lobbyists that they've got going. I think through the SJRA fees. I think through litigation. I think through their media programs and everything else, they are forcing it. So they may not be coming with the same, hey, we're going to charge you $10,000 a day if you don't sign the GRP. But they're still coming at us from that same very direction.
So you know, is there a mafia vibe, I guess, is the question of like, hey, you want us to take care of you, Johnny. You know, like we got some water.
That's what I'm getting.
And I don't want you to not be able to walk to that water.
That's right.
You know, so okay, I've heard that, and we could go back into Splendora's city council minutes, and we could probably find the moment that so maybe that energy was somewhere in there of like, you by law have to meet the groundwater district's policy to hit the 30%. Okay. So Splendora and 150 plus other participants joined up, and it wouldn't, if only half of them had done it, then it wouldn't have been built. But there was just enough that the money could be spread out, and it worked. Okay. But
you don't see a forced build.
No, that's why I'm saying the other part of me.
Seriously. So here's the thing though. I mean, just when you scrape everything off and you say, okay, municipality or med district, we're going to charge you $10,000 a day unless you sign this contract.
And that's where I'm going.
And we're going to use that to issue bonds and build a surface water treatment facility. That's really, I mean, who does that?
I'm about to say something that is going to piss off mud directors, but or city council members. But okay, so we describe like that might be the energy of like, okay, you have to sign this, or you know, we're going to shoot you financially, legally. Okay, so that's why I said there's two sides. I could lean that way, but then there's Shenandoah, and Shenandoah looked at the rules and said, nah, we're good. We're not going to sign on to that. And what did they do?
Right.
So, but when I say mud directors might not like this, like I was on a mud board for 4 years. There was not a lot of creative thinking, business type thinking of how could we make the most bang for our buck. It was just kind of like the lawyer comes in and says, SJRA says this, and I recommend, and it's like, I'm not saying they're all like that, but I'm saying if we go back to the beginning of this conversations and we talk about how many mud meetings you have or haven't gone to, it all starts there. And then when you look at Shenandoah and you see, okay, they partnered with Panorama. Oh, I know it.
Right.
Is it Panorama? I always mix it up with Patton Village.
Panorama Forest or Village.
But it's by Lake Conroe. Right. And so there's a few alternative water sources as defined in the LSGCD's, policy. One of them was surface water. One of them was Catahoula water. So you've got the Chico, and then a clay layer, Evangeline clay layer, Jasper clay layer, and way deep down there, Catahoula. Yeah. A lot of us can't use it. Shenandoah can't. They can't dig a Catahoula well and get water that their people can use. It's too hot and it's too salty. Go up north a bit. So it's not a great testimony. It doesn't disprove anything that you've said, but it is an example of here is a group that was creative enough to stave off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're not going to be able to do that forever. And then they'll get into this conversation, I'm sure, meaning as they need more water, they're going to have to find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I just don't jump onto the whole there's a large part of me that's like, if I didn't know any better, nobody gave me, but that's on me if I was in that position. And now fast forward into the future, look at the lawsuits, look at how much people are willing to double, triple down pay lawyers.
There's a lot of money.
If you were, it's almost like you kind of apathetically approached it at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're shocked. And I'm not saying those are the same elected officials. I'm saying their people are contacting them because they're pissed off about their water bills. And now everybody's like,
yeah.
But I'll just end this ramble by saying, okay, let's just pretend for a second, just a thought experiment. You're the supreme Sith Lord dictator of Montgomery County, and all things go through Hank.
That'd be awesome.
Right? It's all built. It exists.
Okay.
You don't like how it got here. You intrinsically do not, and part of me, what I said at the beginning is, I don't know that we needed it right then, but the way I have to look at it, and what I'm asking you is, well, now what? Now what the fuck do you do that it's a $500 million thing is there, and you don't, do you shutter the doors on it? Do you let some private utility come in and buy it for pennies on the dollars to then sell you the same surface water because all the infrastructure is there? Like, what do you do now?
Well, first of all, it's not mine. It's not. It's the SJRA.
In the thought experiment, your supreme Sith Lord dictator, Hank, over Montgomery County, what do you do if you get to call all the shots?
If I got to call all the shots, I would make the SJRA turn it into a great product and attempt to sell it.
Like private water?
Sure, if that would be it. Or they could approach the city of Splendora, for instance, and say, hey, instead of paying us these fees that you're paying, why don't you take that money and try to build infrastructure back toward our amazing facility that creates the best water possible. And you could give your residents the best water possible at basically the same price. It may go up a little bit, but I'll tell you what, you're going to get what you pay for. When you look at that glass of water, you see how beautiful it is.
You hearing this, SJRA? You got a salesman over here.
And so that's what I would do.
Now let me ask you, if your plan isn't successful and you have fixed costs because you have a bond and you have operating expenses and people go like, appreciate it, Hank, but my groundwater's pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's got minerals, comes from the earth, it's real good stuff. Not that shitty Lake Conroe water that you're sending through some space machine to make it. And I mean, let's face it, that's what Lake Conroe is. There's plenty of sanitation systems all up there.
that are
going,
it's horrible.
And so I am amazed at the technology, and I get, that's why it's so expensive. But if people don't buy on, what's going to happen to that facility?
I'd let it go.
Okay. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's another philosophical conversation.
Businesses take a loss all the time. I've taken losses, a lot of them. And I mean, you let it go and you move on.
There we go.
It was bad management to start out with. You don't build a facility like that and spend $500 million of the taxpayers' money if you don't have a customer. And you can't position yourself to force customers to buy your product. You can't do that.
But let's put all the right and wrong aside for a second, say they did, and go, if we did say it's like a business in the sense that Hank built this giant company, it's the world's largest, most expensive studio, and you didn't. But here's the thing: you convinced Montgomery County that this is really going to be an investment in their community, and they used their money to back it. Mm-hmm. And then you go under. If the loans that paid for it have not been paid off, and they are backed by the citizens, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying it's reality. I'm saying if you shut that thing down, you still owe the money. And you can say, I don't owe the money.
That's true. And I see where you're going with it. And that's why entities like the SJRA need an oversight. There should be oversight to start out with. If they would have had oversight to start out with, I guarantee that thing wouldn't be sitting there.
And I'm happy to jump on a panel, for a conversation about that kind of stuff.
And if they were elected and they were answerable to their own voters and their own citizens, yeah, it wouldn't be there.
Yeah, but it is.
But it is there.
So what do we do?
As far as I'm concerned, it's there and it's not my debt. And I really could care less if those bonds fail.
But you're paying for it.
I shouldn't be paying for it.
But you are.
Well, that needs to go away.
Yeah.
And if we
I'm not making light of it. I'm saying it's a reality.
And if we need to go to court to make that go away,
and you are,
then that needs to go away.
So it's been in court for years, and if the Supreme Court, Texas Supreme Court comes back and says, "No, that's on you, Hank. It's on City of Splendora. It's on all the other GRP participants." And if those that are suing were so confident,
then we swallow that debt and we own up to it. We continue to pay it. But I'll tell you one thing for sure: we unite as a community and we ensure that from this point forward that SJRA would have some oversight and that would be an elected board that governs it.
So I can only, as a candidate,
because you can only have this happen one time.
As a candidate for the Groundwater Conservation District, I can say, circling back to the beginning, that was my point. That's what I want. I'm saying stuff's already happened. I can't come in and change the past, and I can only speak to the constituency that I would represent, but that's the mentality I want. I'm not saying no to this. I'm saying, how about I get some feedback, I get some science, I get some data, we all come together. We're not going to agree because your interests sometimes disagree with my interest. Maybe you can help me subsidize the cost of this, and maybe I can help you subsidize there's opportunities, but if we're all just kind of looking out for ourselves, then I think the cost to individually support, like take just capital budgeting, like does Splendora, for instance, have the dollars in the bank account right now to build something that would somehow help your water infrastructure right now without having to raise your property taxes? If the answer is yes, then hey, let them do. And maybe that's the case with Shenandoah. Maybe that's the reason they're the only ones that could do something different because they had a little change. But if you don't,
well, I think also because Shenandoah has just got a small footprint in their land,
but it's got a big commercial sales tax base.
It does, but physically they have a small footprint and they're landlocked.
Yeah, and
so they knew they'd be able to service their customers pretty easily. I think. So, but you get out here where it's rural, where we're still in the process of creating infrastructure, it's a different ballgame.
Well, and that brings up something I don't think we talked about it on the podcast, but I drove down 99 to get here, and I'm always blown away by what I see and how much is coming.
Crazy.
And look, like I said, I grew up dirt roads, a lot of trees. I go back in that neighborhood, and it doesn't look like it used to.
Yeah,
I'm not from this area, but I imagine y'all are starting to see that too. Liberty County, I looked at population charts on that. I mean, it seems to be moving. And so
I had coffee with an old timer just the other day. God's been around here forever, and him and I were talking about all the growth that's been going on and how things will never be the same in Splendora or East Montgomery County again. Those days are GNOE gone.
And I'm pretty sure every generation says that. 50 years ago, they're like, do you remember back? And
I'm sure they do, but this is a different scale.
It's exponential.
Yeah, it's exponential, and also it's electronic. So not only are we losing a lot of forest and a lot of the old ways of doing things, but we're moving into a virtual lifestyle, and so a lot of things that people were used to, like me when I was a kid, those things are gone forever. And that's without any growth. That's just the process of evolution, of a society.
Well, the whole remote working trend, I mean, the further you can get out from the population centers, people used to move outside the loop into the burbs, and now you go look at a house in the woodlands, and it's like...
And it's kind of sad when you think about it,
But so some of those remote workers that have the option are now moving out to the Splendoras.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to worry about gentrification or anything yet, but I'm saying that take this whole conversation and go back to the philosophical debate that I'm putting out there and going, everything's fine and no consequences, right?
There's always consequences.
Okay. And maybe they're not that bad. Maybe I can live with them. Maybe a couple inches of subsidence, not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I do want a deeper conversation. I do want to understand where I am, because nobody can have this conversation have all the same values, because if you live here versus there, it's going to change.
Be different. Yeah, absolutely.
So if I live out here, like I said, what I'm going to be worried about is, you talk about private property rights. Simon loves to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a property and I have a property, same piece, same size. I have a little well, helps my family, and you put in a giant ass like Walmart commercial level, and you start pumping water to Houston because they're paying you for it. You know, that's his right to capture it. Do you want a government agency to exist that has any say in that relationship? Because the water doesn't know where your boundaries start and stop.
And I can see the benefit of having one, but I'm a really small government guy.
Me too.
And I'm almost like an Alaskan. I want to be able to do what I want to be able
Half
to do.
my family lives
and
up there.
And if the next guy wants to do what he wants to be able to do, and he wants to export water, and it comes down just between me and him, that's a me and him thing.
There you go.
Do I think the government should get involved? Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's none of their business.
Okay. So that means
that's where I'm at.
If we have a conversation in 3-5 years, I want to be able to have a whiskey with you and go, Hank, I'm sorry that Simon or
But
when
see, I've got on the other end of that, and now I'm going to totally contradict myself.
That's what I do all the time.
Because I believe that part of this, and this is something that's not being talked about, but it is a big part of this whole water thing, is we need a flood control district. And the only reason why I think we need a flood control district is because we need a certain subset of individuals. All they do is mitigate flood here.
Yeah.
Because whether we're pumping groundwater out and we're subsiding due to that, or whether we're pouring concrete and we're just displacing where water goes, we have an issue with standing water. We have an issue with flooding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the only way we're ever going to be able to solve that is with a flood control district. And we just elected a new county commissioner. Smart guy. This is probably one of the smartest dudes I've ever met in my life. I've had extensive conversations with him.
Mm-hmm.
He can do more for flooding out here than anybody's been able to do so far. But I still think even he would, and he knows it, he'd benefit from having a flood control district here.
Limited, elected?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's something that at the end of the day, the voters can still control, I'm for it.
Well, I love your optimism and the everyday voter. I would like to be as optimistic. I've been doing this whole communication, local politics thing for a while, and it's not that I'm disappointed. I'll go back to the thing I said about, I get that people are busy, but this is what happens when big things are going on that impact you, and then you push the clock forward 5-10 years. This stuff is happening all the time. And I'm sitting here saying it going, I haven't paid that much attention to what Conroe ISD is doing,
right.
Or what, it's like, I only have like bandwidth for, I can talk to you about water.
Yeah.
Roads I'm pretty good at. Flooding, I mean, I'd have to go find some extra time
it could easily take up your whole day, every day.
So
I can see that.
Conversations like this are good. I love a good debate. I love hearing the harshest critics. Feel free to annihilate me in the comments, and because here's the thing, I don't get mad about it. I'll consider. I might think you're wrong. I might see something I didn't see before. And I think that's what we've done here.
It's been good.
I'm going to go back and look at some numbers and go, well, maybe there's way more water. But I'm always going to do that. I'm always going to try to get the biggest, broadest, most diverse sense that I can on something before I just make a decision.
Me and my friends call that open-mindedness.
I like it.
So there you go. So, average voter, how can they find out about you? And if somebody wants to vote for you, how do they go about doing it? You got a website or anything?
So you can look me up on Facebook. I didn't go so fancy to get a consultant and put a page. This is pretty
Facebook's
guerrilla
these
style.
days. It's
So
great.
here's the thing. There's no E in Ridgway. So if you're looking me up, people, James Ridgway, Ridgway,
Cool. Okay.
Junior, and that should take you to my Facebook page. And I'm also raising what funds I can. I think I'm at a couple hundred.
Awesome.
And I'm going to be using that just to get the word out. Don't worry, any of you outside Precinct 3. I mean, I'll take it, but I get that you have your own directors to focus on. But yeah, it's going to be good. I don't know if we mentioned the kind of money that went into this election 4 years. I don't think we talked about that, but
A lot.
it was surprising to me because 4 years ago was the first time this was an elected board.
Right.
And your guest Simon, him and a couple other people dropped a little over $200,000 that you can track the money and see how it went into and it went to their raw candidates, Restore Affordable Water. Did your water get cheaper, by the way, in the last 4 years? Okay.
No.
So,
But I don't
just
think
a little,
but I don't think it's going up too much either.
okay. So, that's a lot of money. And this is where the tinfoil hat goes on. This is why I start talking about concerns about private water utilities having a vested interest in what I would call capturing. I think they captured that board. All the policies gone his way.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't done anything for me. I don't know if it's done anything for you. We'll see, but
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all
but
turns
as an
out.
example, like his new permits will not fall under a GRP. So they won't have to sign on to anything. They because of what you said earlier about, the way the court decision went this way versus that way. So, and that's something, I think before we go, some of the things that I want people to pay attention to is, if you hear Simon or anyone else say, and I would say this to Simon's face, I've said it multiple times, the court made a decision and they sided with us. Okay. Well, what actually happened was with the lawsuits involved originally, before even the SJRA thing, with the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, there was a lawsuit from City of Conroe involving former Mayor Webb Melder, Simon Cicada, and they didn't like those rules. They didn't like those speed limits on groundwater. That thing went from one court to an appeals court, some wins, some losses for both sides. It gets to the Supreme Court. And what bothers me is when I hear him say, and the Supreme Court sided with, well, at that same time, after dropping that $200,000 of campaign money, and hey, you know what? Those candidates won. Kudos to them. Whether the money helped, not a problem. But this is the tinfoil hat thing. I just find it interesting that you would drop that much money. Maybe he's super passionate and really cares. I'll give him that. That's quite possible. But it's equally possible that there's a business case going on here. Every one of the people he backed is on that board. And now the policies are going his way. So, and then if you even go further, I guess I should finish the thought. His candidates are on that board, and right as it's at the Texas Supreme Court, they pull out of the case. And they go, you know what, Conroe, you're right. We had it wrong. But now it's a totally new board. And so if you look at this last election cycle, Harry Hardman, who was the president of the Lone Star Groundwater Board, is on there. We just saw the two employees, Paul Vergamo, who was there forever, Steve, I'm thinking of the comedian Stephen Wright, but the other gentleman that resigned. So we're already seeing some shakeups there. But, again, feel free to share in the comments, but it almost seems like this is going to be a chess move to make sure that Conroe does not settle. They don't get out of, because I think there's talks about, okay, has this gone on long enough? Should we start paying? You know, because that thing is escalating. All the money they haven't paid and the fees.
I've heard that Conroe's wanting to settle, and it makes me concerned because I don't see why they would at this point.
And I'm not here to take side. I'm going, here is someone that's been on your show. He said his piece, and I'm saying, I don't think he represents me, and that's fine if you think he represents you. And I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying there's enough for me to be cautiously suspicious about that. Maybe it's more for his business than it is for just regular people. But I'm happy to be wrong.
Oh, yeah,
I'm happy to be wrong.
That's more than a possibility. I mean, why wouldn't it be? He's a businessman. He's not stupid.
And if he can do both, if it's good for him and it's good for me, great. But I'm going to just kind of sit over on the sideline and be like, all right, Simon, we're Saudi Arabia of water. There's no, it's all good. And, but the moment I see someone like him put in something to start selling groundwater to another, I mean, I've been talking about it like a major city, like a Houston. But if you go look, and I'll stop going down the rabbit hole after this. But there was a natural resources committee at the state level, August 24th, and some of those people I was describing that are having well issues, that are seeing water levels drop. They were there testing. It was like an 8-hour committee meeting. And, you know, there's one side going, there's plenty of water. And there's one side going, no, but my well, you know?
Yeah, we really need to get to the bottom of that.
But just to tie a bow on it all, and this is where I feel like the tinfoil hat turns into, you know, a real boy. If you start looking at the people that were orbiting what happened, and I sent you some of this stuff, so feel free to jump in there, but some of the names that'll pop up are like Mike Thornhill, Bob Harden, Stacy Reese. These are all consultants that work or did work. Bob got let go, and that's a whole nother mystery, but you see them at these other places where the policies flipped, and 10 years later, like that story about the Vista Ridge, 142 miles of pipe going from I can't remember the area, but it's closer to Bastrop area,
right?
And they're pumping groundwater 142 miles, and they're taking it there.
That's a long way to go.
And you start looking at some of the names, and then I've got 280 pages through a public information request between former LSGCD board president Webb Melder, Bob Harden, Mike Thornhill, Simon Cicada happens to be in a lot of those emails, as if he's just got a seat at the table. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong or illegal, or, you know, I think any citizen could be part of emails like that, but it certainly feels like a concerted effort, but I can't prove that. And even if it is, maybe it's not a bad thing, but I'm going to sit here and call maybe bullshit.
Okay.
If it is. So.
Sure. Yeah. And you've definitely got a right to ask those questions. You know, I mean, as a taxpayer and as a citizen.
Well, you know, they threatened to sue me, the current board.
No, I didn't.
I should have led with that. They threatened civil and criminal litigation against me because in my you know, Don Quixote tilting at windmills journey to try to find out some of this stuff. So the short version is that Webb one day quit, and he's been the leader of this fight for a long time.
Right.
And that, the journalist in me, I've never been able to take that. It bothered. I was like, no reason? No. And then the same night, the hydrologist Bob Harden was fired. I put in a request for all the emails between them, just seeing, just classic journalism 101 move.
Right.
And they sent me a redacted file that wasn't redacted. They thought it was redacted, but it was just black bars, like electronic black bars. So when I scrolled, I could read everything. And the moment I could read it, and I mean, I know freedom of information. I know that the moment I could read that, the public, read it. It is now open to the public. And I posted what they thought they had redacted. They sent me a cease and disorder.
Cease and desist, yeah.
Cease and desist. It's the whiskey, man.
Yeah, I got you.
And
good stuff.
Yeah, it is really good. They sent me that, and they threatened to sue me. They said I committed a crime, and my favorite part, and this is in the newspaper, they actually did. There's multiple stories that got done on this, but they said, while I hadn't publicly acknowledged how I got the information, which isn't true. I told people I copy and pasted it because I could do that. But while, in their statement, while I hadn't publicly acknowledged it, they believe, and I'm quoting, that I had used advanced technical techniques to get that data. And when I was asked, this is me paraphrasing whatever I said, I was so blown away that the paper ran with this. I said, alas, the district's concerns are true. I did. Back in elementary school, and many of my friends were playing Oregon Trail in computer class, I busied myself studying the darker arts of the cyber hacking world. And I used one of their more, malevolent techniques called copy and paste. Yeah. And they put it in there.
Control C, Control V.
Yeah. Gotcha. But that, just to kind of close it up, I mean, that's the kind of relationship that when I'm coming at this, there's a history before this, before I just decided to run. And that, more than anything else, pissed me off so much that a government agency would threaten criminal charges against me. And I mean, I wasn't worried, but I've never heard of anything like that. And it made me think there was something there, that my tinfoil hat might have been aluminum foil. Like it only made me more concerned that they were trying to hide something or do something. So the candidates that are on there now have talked about transparency. Well, shame on them, because they threatened a private citizen with civil and criminal, and they made an argument. They said I hacked them, but they know what I did. I showed them. I went to their board meeting and literally showed them, and they didn't want to hear it. So what they should have been mad at is the consultant that handled it and didn't do it right, but shouldn't have been mad at me. So
okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking with us. All right, guys. So we get deeper and deeper and deeper into the water wars. So deep, as a matter of fact, that I can only see above water just a little bit. But I think we're starting to unravel the story a little bit. I hope you're interested. I hope you'll come to the open forum that we're going to have. And it's going to be September the 20th, 6:30 p.m. in the community room at Randall Reed Stadium in New Caney. Free to the public. I want you guys to come out. We're going to have a lot of good speakers. There's going to be a Q&A session, so you'll be able to ask your questions if you've got questions. Let's get to the bottom of this thing. Let's find out who's right, who's wrong. Let's find out what we can do to either save the water that we've got or use what we've got. I want to know what the data is. So we'll get there. Anyway, I'm Hank Vatt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we're out.